Books teach us, they inspire us, they challenge us, and they expand our horizons. Books contain the best thoughts of the greatest minds in history, but the problem is, there are millions to choose from. So what should you invest your time reading? What should you spend your money on? How do you sort through all the bullshit and find the good shit? You let the superior men do the work. Matt and Jay take the best books, pick the most important points, and distill them down to a concentrated 30-minute podcast. We help you find the books you need to read and why you need to read them. You may even learn something. So take out your coffee, tea, a glass of wine, or a good IPA. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to the Superior Men Bookcast.
All right, and welcome back to the Superior Men Bookcast. Today we're going to be discussing The Way of Men by Jack Donovan.
Fantastic book.
This is a really interesting book that all guys should read, and really all women should read this too to be able to get inside the minds of men. It is a book about how men mostly relate to each other and this concept of what masculinity is. He set out to kind of define the essence, an amoral essence of what masculinity is. Not good, not bad, just if you cut out all the religion, all of the various different philosophies out there, you take out kind of political backgrounds, internal motivations, and you just like go raw, straightforward. What is it to be a guy? What is it to be a man and a masculine man? And he had some powerful stuff in this book.
And I love it too, where one of the big things with that to me is the group mentality, the gang mentality, as far as that's what he's talked about, and love that because I think that does set the tone, and I know you and I have talked about that on the Superior Men podcast, as far as like a group dynamic and a gang and a collection of men together, because that is really, I think, distills that essence down and really helps to cut through all of the BS, especially with sort of the female or feminine imperative that there is on society. So it really does give a kind of shining beacon through that, and I love it. I love the way that he cuts through and the way that he writes. I quite enjoyed. I listened to this book. I did not read this book. I just listened to it and really quite enjoyed that. So really, and looking at this like that, the challenges that this book is kind of seeking out is just going, hey, look, here's a great guide. Here's something that you can do, practical steps that you can take as a man, and to show what historically and the way that we've looked at the way men congregate together, which is it's awesome.
That gang mentality is really interesting. When I first kind of heard that the way the gang was kind of a thing, and then actually went and did a little bit of research on Donovan himself, he's gone out and is part of like this pagan neo-pagan group out in the wilderness. I don't know where it is, if it's back east. I think it may be back east, like Pennsylvania-ish area. I know he writes in Oregon, but the Wolves of Vinland, it's like this group of guys who go out and have these like weekend hunting trips where they're just run around in loincloths and have like these traditional fire things and drink ridiculous amounts and just like be men with other men and spend time in that like kind of like raw natural state. When you're in that state, that it changes your mentality and you start thinking about all of civilization, and every civilization can be broken down to these small groups or gangs of men. And yeah, it's a really powerful concept. The book itself, I would say easy to read. On the scale of really challenging, really complicated to really simple, I would say it's pretty easy to read, but not politically correct and not as easy to swallow, especially for certain people.
Yeah, I could see certain people having a hard time with this, as far as what some of these concepts are, because it is completely antithetical to our modern civilization. And I think that there is a lot of issues with that. There's other authors who have kind of written on that. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But so the audio was great to listen to. Donovan narrates it himself, which is awesome. It was a little bit. He has a different style of speaking, and so this was the first time I'd ever heard him speak. Was when I listened to the book. So right at the beginning, I was like, all right, well, let's listen to it. But then I found myself really getting into it very quickly. So, the book, there's quite a few reviews on Amazon. There's 4.5 stars, 676 or so reviews on there. He's very significant in the Red Pill, the Manosphere. He does speak at like the 21 conference the past few years, so that's always it adds a little bit of credibility there. Promoted on the Art of Manliness. Brett McKay's he really enjoys it. There's also several other authors here. Jay, you speak to that.
Yeah, no, I the thing that grabbed me is Chuck. Are we going to say it correct here? Palahniuk. So close. Chuck Palahniuk, who most of you know from Fight Club. Amazing book, kind of one of the modern pillars of modern masculine thinking in the last 20 years here. He as openly promotes reading Donovan, which I thought was really great. Also, some other major authors, Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, who as a feminist, quote unquote feminist author, is very strongly promoting that kind of thinking. I thought that was particularly interesting. So I found out about the book actually from starting with you, Matt. You kind of referenced it a little bit and said that I really enjoyed this book. We have it on one of our books that you need to read on the Superior Men, We Are Superior Men website, and which, by the way, great list of books there. And we're going to be working through those as we put our bookcast together here. But found that on there, and I was like, okay, well, I'll have to go check it out. Started reading through it, and it's short. It's less than I think you could probably read it 4 or 5 hours, no problem. It takes a little bit longer on the audio. If you're a fast reader, you probably could read it in a single sitting, and yet it's so potent. There's so much in there, and that's why almost everywhere in the manosphere, anywhere that you're looking at kind of this modern question of like MGTOW, or like what are men, and how do you deal with women, and how do you deal with these really important questions, it's continuously come back to, because there's so much potency in his writing.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's really where I saw it first. I'm just going off memory. I'm fairly certain that it's on the sidebar for the Red Pill. If you are so lucky to be able to still get into the Red Pill Reddit community, you can see some stuff there. It's one of the required sets of reading. It's great. It really does kind of give you a holistic approach, and that's where I saw it first, and I had it for a while, and then I listened to it, so it's great. So with a quick bio of Jack Donovan. So he's a writer, blogger, podcaster. Jack-Donovan.com is his website. He's written several books. Just a few. If you go and look and click on his about page in his website, Way of Men, A Sky Without Eagles, Becoming a Barbarian, and a More Complete Beast. He's written others, but there's those are the 4 that he's really pushing. Like I said, podcast. I have not read his other books, and I will be reading his other books.
He has such a great way of kind of cutting out all of the crap and continuing to maintain. One of the things I think probably the most the most fascinating things about him for me personally reading is he continues to make this distinction between morality and amorality in its relationship to men. And we'll kind of get into that just a little bit here later, but that concept of this is what people think is good or bad, and this is what is regardless of good or bad. Just like it's a tool. If you have a knife can be used to attack somebody, can be used to assault somebody, can be used to kill somebody. It can also be used to chop vegetables, and it can be used to whittle spears. It can be used to defend your group or to save somebody's life. It's a tool. And he talks a lot about manhood as this thing that can be used for moral purposes and could be used for immoral purposes, but at its core, it's neither good nor bad. It is this thing.
Right, and you can take that and you can exploit that process of that manhood and becoming a man, especially adolescence. You can look at when we hear gang, we think, like an inner city gang or whatever, but it's the same kind of deal. You take these, these kids growing up without any direction. You give them some direction. You put them in a spot. You put them together and give them a strong leader, and now they kind of coalesce into this group. And so I would say that would be in a kind of a more of a negative sense. But that same thing happens. If you look at like the Boy Scouts. It's the same sort of idea with them, or any sort of group that you have. It's that coalescing and putting it together, and that's really the distilled essence of this book. Jack Donovan himself, studies MMA, lives off the land, has, as Jay talked about before, part of the Wolves of Vinland, like a neo-pagan group. But again, that... don't get hung up too much on that. It's just like, look, this is just the path that he has chosen. So I love it.
He seems to embody. He's the kind of person that I would love to spend some time with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like hang out with this guy because he seems
pick his brain.
Pick his brain, but also just like watch him do what he normally does. He seems so passionate, and even just like his Wolves of Vinland group, just as an example. And if you see the guy, he's jacked. Like he is a big, strong guy. He has obviously spent a lot of time investing himself, body and mind, in and philosophy, just to shape himself into the kind of man that he has studied and looked at. And one of the things that's really good is in his books is that he will go back in history and look at masculinity, not just in the last 20 years or 50 years, but he goes all the way back to Rome, back to Greece, back to the beginning of civilization, and reference multiple books and talks about what this man has been through history, and how, in particular, how the last decade or a couple of decades that is disintegrating in our society. And it seems like he's just invested himself and said, no, I refuse to accept that. I'm going to make myself into this guy that I think that men should be, and I'm going to work and try and create groups like that. He created this gang and tried to help other people. One of the chapters in the book is called How to Start a Gang. It seems like he tries to embody that, and that's really powerful. Anybody that can work hard and live the way, walk the talk, man. That's good stuff. So
the four main virtues that he goes through here, the tactical virtues, and he does sort of explain these, but these are the four, if we're going to call it like the four pillars of this book: strength, courage, mastery, and honor, and references those through how that works within manhood, how that works within masculinity, and how that works with creating a group, and like Jay had just said, how to start a gang, how that whole thing kind of goes back together. But really, that strength, courage, mastery, honor, four pillars of masculinity, and that's really one of the I would say the cores that run through this entire book. So really, when we're looking at this, that's really sort of what this book is about here. But let's kind of talk about what we have in the book and kind of what our thoughts are on the book here in this next section here. So, so Jay, tell me, what'd you like best about the book?
I like that it was short. That was really my best thing. No, I love. There's a lot of good things I like about this book. One of the things that I think is really neat about getting a chance to do this bookcast is it gives me a chance to go and review books that I've already read. And this is one of those kinds of books where, as I was reading back through it, I'm like, this is where I need to spend more time thinking about this. This is potent. There's so many excellent things. And I love how much material he puts together in a concise, powerful, punchy format that just cuts through all this BS and goes straight to the heart of masculinity. And I feel like it's really needed right now. More and more guys are really struggling to hold on to what is this stuff, because you're not seeing it a lot of other places. So I really like that.
Right. And to sort of condense it all down is good too, and I'm with you on that one. So give me a quote or two. What did you really like?
I'd say one of the ones that really grabbed me. I've been raised in kind of more of a female based system for a really long time, and this concept of masculinity says masculinity is about what men want from each other. When someone tells a man to be a man, they're telling him to be more like other men and more like the majority of men, and ideally more like the men whom other men hold in high regard. So when you have a gang, that's a group of men interacting with each other, and they have their own needs and their own requirements. That strength, courage, mastery, and honor. These are skills and abilities that men have and value in other men. And I thought that thinking to me really kind of changed a lot. And then I would say the other thing that really kind of stood out would be this concept of courage in a broader sense. He says, courage in its highest and purest form involves the willful risk of bodily harm or death for the good of the group. Lesser risks require greater dilutions of courage, but the greatest thing that you can do courage-wise, that capacity to give to somebody else, is this idea of giving up your life for other people and for that group. I think that's very, very cool.
And it's funny. So on that quote too, what I like is you're talking about that courage, putting yourself at risk. That is almost purely a masculine trait, not exclusively, but much more of a masculine trait. And then the first quote that you had there, it just reminds me of what I hear a lot of people talking about too, and they go, "Oh, man up." A lot of people don't like that term now, but that's really what that is. Be a man, act like a man. Awesome, great quotes there. I like those. So, what about this? What did you learn from the book?
Let's see. What did I learn from the book? I'm continuing to learn from the book, but I think probably the one thing that stood out the most to me and has kind of continued to change me a little bit is to get me thinking, this is men, this is what men are, this is what men are supposed to do, and there are these amoral qualities that are not good and not bad, they just are. And that process of what a man is compared to what other men think he should be, compared to what society thinks he should be, religion should be, that it's not good or bad. Being a man is not good or bad. It is a tool, it is a powerful thing that certain sexes have, 50% of the population has, and 50% really doesn't have those things. Masculine, good. Feminine, good. But distinctly different and very, very powerful to dial into exactly what masculinity is. And I think every man should be thinking about it. Fathers should be teaching their sons this. Sons and young men should be learning this stuff. Very, very important to think about as a man.
All right. What you have a critique of the book?
I would say the critique would be probably him. It seems like he kind of wants to have anarchy And I don't know exactly what his ideal civilization would look like. He continues to come back to kind of this Walking Dead apocalyptic scenario when things fall apart. And I would like to ask him how he plans to kind of reconcile those two concepts. Because he definitely doesn't make that clear in the book.
Yeah, good point. Do you have any? You have a question or any questions that you would ask him?
I would say my one question would be, where are you now? What are you doing right now? The material that's on the website and that's out there, it's been a couple of years since he's put out anything, and I want to know what he's up to, and I would like to be involved and connected to whatever it is, because he has so much power and passion, and he's such a kind of a thinker on these things. So I want to see more from the guy. I'd like to know what he's up to, and I'd like to be connected to it.
No, that's awesome. And do you have any related books or anything connected, or just sort of sparked your mind for other books that you've read?
I would say kind of it's kind of like the masculine side of The Way of the Superior Men, by David Data. There's like these two are kind of like the yin and yang for men, and I think that would be a great read maybe right after this.
The less touchy-feely.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So Matt, let's turn the tables here. Let's give you a chance to talk. I know you like talking.
Yeah. No. So. Yeah.
What did you like best about this book?
With this book, I enjoyed the punchiness of the book, and so one of the things that I really do like is, I don't know, and I've always been sort of fascinated by sort of like the preppers and paying attention, worried about that zombie apocalypse, right? So that's sort of what I've been looking at. And I think
always important to think about.
Yeah, well, and some of that is too. It's like, well, look, just because our modern society is the way that it is, doesn't mean that masculinity is that much different. It means that, and sometimes going back to a simpler time, which is I think why these zombie apocalypse movies are so big and popular. Because you just distill this back, you basically remove society all the way out from it. So to me, that's what I like best, is just like, let's just sort of get rid of the modern bullshit that's out there and just put it back into a simpler term, and that makes things stand out a little bit clearer.
That's good. That's good. Very, very, very powerful and challenging too to think about, because there's so much civilization out there right now, and to try and cut through all that, that could really change, I think, a lot of people. So give me a quote or two that really stood out for you.
So I liked his concept of and his showing a difference between being a good man versus being good at being a man.
Oh, yeah.
And, he talked at length about that several times, but being good at being a man doesn't mean you're a good man. There are in very, very morally corrupt people who are good at being a man, but they're not a good man. So I like it. And so those two are not, they actually really don't have anything to do with each other. Being a good man versus being good at being a man. But one of his quotes here, so being good at being a man is about being willing and able to fulfill the natural role of men in a survival scenario. Being good at being a man is about showing other men that you are the kind of guy that they'd want on their team if the shit hits the fan. Being good at being a man isn't a quest for moral perfection, it's about fighting to survive. And 100% agree with that. So that it is a role, and it is part of what you do, and even there is, it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically a survival scenario for me, but that's the distilled essence of it. So that was my favorite quote in here.
That's such a good quote, and it really, I think, is very, very important to think about. Anytime, if you're a political leader or a religious leader or somebody who's like in charge of other people, everybody needs to be thinking about that quote all the time. What would you say? What did you learn from this book, and like how did it affect you?
So I love the 4 pillars, really: the tactical virtues, strength, courage, mastery, and honor. Again, it sort of distills the masculine essence down. I really, so it's just distilling down these kind of bigger parts and ideas, and just sort of taking these concepts that you may have in your head and putting them down into words, so you can really kind of talk about what it is. That's what I like the most about this, and I would say that's what I learned the most, is just sort of putting those pieces down, because again, something happens, whatever, if society crumbles, what are you going to do? Who's going to survive? Are those people, are your therapists, are those going to be the ones that we're going to be looking to for things? Or are we going to be looking to the people who can actually provide some concrete and absolute value? So that's what I liked.
Very, 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 very powerful. All 4 of those concepts. What did you like least?
I will say, and I tend to be very concise when I go through stuff. So some of it to me felt like we were kind of repeating through some of the stuff, or we were hitting the same points over and over, which, and that's just a personal critique of mine. I know for a lot of people like the kind of repetition. For me, that's not the biggest part for me.
All right. So he needs to tighten it up just a little bit. What questions would you ask him other than why he ran on too long?
So no, I would just ask him. I would just be curious how he distilled those pieces down. What experiences in his life led him to that?
Oh, that's a great question. When you ask him that, I'd like to be there for that. And how about any other related books that you'd recommend?
So
on this connected.
So we talked about it before. Fight Club. If you guys have seen the movie, fantastic. It's a great movie, and it's probably one of the best film adaptations of a book, in my opinion. Read the book, though; it's great. Chuck Palahniuk, Fight Club. Fantastic. A lot of the same concepts are in there.
I haven't read it yet myself, so we were talking about it earlier, so I'm looking forward to reading that. So definitely need to check out Fight Club. All right, so as we're kind of looking at this book overall here, any final thoughts you want to leave people with before they kind of go out and explore this on their own?
One thing I actually kind of want to talk about, just real quick, it's another quote that I really liked, and it's, "Women can demonstrate strength, but strength is a quality that defines masculinity. There's no human culture where men who are weak are considered manlier, while women who are more muscular are considered more womanly." So I love that, because I love the talking about strength, because I think it's very antithetical to the popular culture right now. Like, women are strong and amazing. It's like, well, I get the PC thing, that what we're trying to do here, but that's not really what it is. And I don't think that there's very many women out there who would love to be able to overpower their man all the time with physical strength. So no, I love that quote and that concept.
That general concept, I would have to agree with you on that, and I really, reading through, is surprising to find out how strongly I agree with most of what Donovan says on these subjects, like, and challenging, but at the same time kind of like, yes, men and women are different, our situation is different, and we need to be aware of that if we're going to function at our highest level. Men with men, women with women, male-female relationships, family, society. So super, super amazing stuff. Go read this. Go pick it up. We have links here in the show notes. This is an amazing book. You need to read it. Guys, read it. Girls, read it. So thanks so much for listening to our show today. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon.
A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. Thank you for listening to the Superior Men Bookcast. Share it with a friend. You heard our thoughts. Go read it for yourself.